If we had to be concerned about an industry, it would be the traditional auto industry. We think that gas-powered vehicles are going to be obsolete within the next 5 to 10 years. We think with supply chain issues and with the food and energy prices caused by this shock, this Russia's invasion of Ukraine, that once again, innovation is going to help solve these problems. Electric vehicles, there's an accelerated consumer preference shift towards electric vehicles like Tesla because of oil prices. And we think there's no stopping that trend now.
Does that cause a shock to one of your long-term holdings in Tesla in terms of the stock price and also the company's financials?
Gasoline demand this summer dropped to levels that we have not seen since 1997. That's real demand destruction, and it couldn't have happened, we do not believe, without electric vehicles at the margin taking huge share from traditional automobiles. I'm kind of excited to see what Elon will do. I actually think he'll work closely with Jack Dorsey and maybe open up the ecosystem, take away the censorship, make it much more transparent, and I think add more value to that ecosystem.
You don't think that it'll be a mess if that happens? That it'll just be sort of a free-for-all where it's tougher to find commentary of value?
Cathie Wood of ARK Invest continues to warn investors that the Fed is screwing up. The US is currently in a recession. Tesla has made the internal combustion engine obsolete, which puts legacy automotive manufacturers at great risk of going bankrupt later this decade. Cathie Wood also shares her thoughts on Elon Musk's Twitter takeover, ARK's investing strategy, and the profoundly positive impact of fully autonomous vehicles. And quick heads up, posted another video today on Patreon, clocks in at just over 15 minutes regarding Elon Musk's psychedelic exploration. Definitely don't want to miss that one. If not, remember, you can join Patreon with the card in the corner or the link in the pinned comment. That was the 175th exclusive video on Patreon. Plenty more to come, so I'll see you over there.
They will have increased interest rates from 0.25 to 4%, and that's a 16-fold increase. This is a real shock to the system. And I do believe we will see the ramifications in many ways. We're seeing housing shutting down. And I think we're going to see a lot of other activities shutting down as well. We believe we're in a recession, and we believe this recession now will be sustained. And if we see an increase in GDP, it's probably because either inventories are continuing to increase or imports are coming down as companies try to unwind their inventories.
Cathie, so do you see a severe recession, and then how long do you think this bear market will continue?
Well, what's interesting, I think many people are coming around to the idea that we're in a recession or we're going into a recession. The first 2 quarters with real GDP growth negative to us means we're in a recession.
Fact check. Wrong, misinformation. Somebody cancel Cathie. Please call her boss and get her fired from her job. This is not true. How do I know? Because I recently saw the updated post on the official White House website attempting to gaslight and redefine what a recession actually is. I'm not even kidding. It's probably nothing. So yeah, US is currently in a recession. And don't let any gaslighting from the White House convince you otherwise.
Is there a big buy that you now kind of think through or evaluate going into the end of the year here?
Well, you have to consider the source here. Our focus, our sole focus, is on disruptive innovation. And we also believe that innovation solves problems. We had a tough time going into COVID with our kind of strategy. And then we had a boom in our strategy during COVID because guess what? We needed the genomic revolution to help sequence the coronavirus and figure out tests and vaccines. And our kinds of companies helped with that. We think with supply chain issues and with the food and energy prices caused by this shock, this Russia's invasion of Ukraine, that once again, innovation is going to help solve these problems. Electric vehicles, there's an accelerated consumer preference shift towards electric vehicles like Tesla because of oil prices. And we think there's no stopping that trend now.
True and very important. Now, we all know the EV transition was already happening. We're well past the tipping point. However, the massive shock to people's wallets who own ICE vehicles, who've seen gasoline prices go to the moon, this is causing a huge number of consumers to start thinking, man, this is fucking expensive. Is there an alternative? Wait, let me check out those EVs. Wait a minute, what? Cheaper to own and operate? Almost at sticker price parity? Huh, I might consider an EV. And I'd have to be a moron to buy another gas vehicle. So the huge shocks in terms of gas prices have caused a huge boon for electric vehicle adoption. It's probably accelerated the perception change from a lot of consumers who are now being forced to look into the economics of owning a nice vehicle and then curiously investigating, hang on, what about these EVs I keep hearing about? Let me do some homework. Next minute, oh, I'd literally need to be brain dead to buy an ICE vehicle again. Not doing that.
And in terms of food prices, we do believe that gene editing is going to help us figure out how to produce crops in areas that are less fertile than the Ukraine, the breadbasket of Europe, with less water, less fertilizer, less pesticide. So we're going to continue to see the miracles associated with the genomic revolution, but our other strategies as well, whether we're talking about robotics, solving the labor shortage.
Hello, Tesla bot.
Energy storage, I mentioned electric vehicles.
Hello, Tesla electric vehicles and Tesla battery storage products. Seems like all roads lead to Tesla.
Pulling us away from oil consumption, artificial intelligence, which is going to help every company become more competitive if they use their data.
Artificial intelligence, drawing on data. Hello, Tesla. Once again, I'm not even fucking kidding. Every goddamn road leads to Tesla.
And combine it with other data in effective ways. And then blockchain technologies, which is going to take the middlemen out of a lot of businesses and take the cost out of a lot of businesses, helping us to solve this inflation problem. So again, consider the source. We think innovation solves problems. It certainly gave us an appreciation of that during COVID. Our strategy was high flying, and we think we have even more problems right now. So stay tuned.
Cathie, this economic shock that you talk about in large part at the hands of the Fed, does that cause a shock to one of your long-term holdings in Tesla in terms of the stock price and also the company's financials?
Well, certainly all stocks are experiencing difficulty in this environment as the market tries to understand how far the Fed is going to go and how deep this recession is going to be. So Tesla, as I mentioned, is a solution to the problem. It's very interesting. If you look at gasoline demand this summer in the United States, it dropped below COVID levels, the worst of COVID, and it dropped to levels that we have not seen since 1997. That's real demand destruction, and it couldn't have happened, we do not believe, without electric vehicles at the margin taking huge share from traditional automobiles. So if we had to be concerned about an industry, it would be the traditional auto industry.
Allow me to translate what I personally believe Cathie Wood just said. Hi, I'm Cathie Wood of ARK Invest. I'm not really allowed to fully express my thoughts in 100% truthful, honest terms because I might get in trouble. I need to be very delicate. But I personally believe that the entire legacy automotive industry is completely and utterly fucked, and the vast majority of these companies will be bankrupt before the decade's out. But I can't say that, so I'll just talk about having some concerns about a certain industry rather than spelling it out in more explicit terms. Now, I could be misinterpreting what Cathie's saying, but I can tell you that that's what I'm saying. They're all fucked. There'll be very few exceptions. By the end of this decade, most of the legacy automotive manufacturers, the companies that we know today by name, will no longer exist. They'll either have been acquired, merged into a gigantic conglomerate, and or have gone completely out of business. And the few survivors who managed to limp their way into the early 2030s will be a shadow of their former selves, producing a fraction of the vehicles annually that they did at their peak ICE volumes. Just you watch.
We think that gas-powered vehicles are going to be obsolete within the next 5 to 10 years, and the traditional auto industry has to figure out a way to migrate into electric vehicles and into the next big phase, which we think Tesla is leading, the autonomous taxi platform phase.
Good fucking luck with that. You've got better odds of turning a hoe into a housewife.
So lots of changes here. Traditional industries are in harm's way as innovation pushes through, accelerated by some of the turmoil out there.
Cathie, when we last talked back in the spring, I believe it was just at the beginning of the Elon Musk Twitter saga. Now we are maybe getting to a little bit of closure in that case. But I would pose to you the same question that I asked you then, because a lot of time has elapsed and different events have happened. Are you at all concerned about Musk's attention wavering now that it looks like he is, in fact, going to be taking over and likely at least having a pretty heavy hand in running Twitter?
Well, we are prolific users of Twitter. ARC gives away its research. We give away our research not when it's finished, but as it's evolving. And our most prolific platform, social platform out there, is Twitter. I'm kind of excited to see what Elon will do. I actually think he'll work closely with Jack Dorsey and maybe open up the ecosystem, take away the censorship, make it much more transparent, and I think add more value to that ecosystem.
You don't think that it'll be a mess if that happens? That it'll just be sort of a free-for-all where it's tougher to find commentary of value?
Now, as I say, there are no dumb questions, but in my opinion, there are silly questions, and this is one of them. It's a common question and or response regarding the lack of censorship if Elon takes over Twitter. What is censorship? My definition of censorship is the prevention of certain ideas and or opinions being heard. It's got nothing to do with quality of content, value of content, and it's got everything to do with particular information, particular opinions. It's very different. Many people have this default assumption, if Elon doesn't want to prevent certain people sharing their thoughts and opinions and ideas, Twitter's going to turn into a dumpster fire with no value. I won't be able to find anything useful. These are the same kind of people who need somebody in a position of authority to tell them what to think, believe, and do. These people are dangerous and usually quite dumb. Elon's goal isn't to turn what is already a dumpster fire of a company into an even greater dumpster fire. His goal is not to make the user experience of somebody who actually uses Twitter to consume and or create worse. The goal is to make it better. Censorship and quality of content, value in content, are completely unrelated concepts. Many people, however, conflate them almost automatically. This company or entity isn't telling me what I'm allowed to believe and think and censoring certain things so I don't even get exposed to ideas that I'm unfamiliar with that they deem unnecessary, untrue, dangerous, or misinformation. My Twitter experience will be worse. I need somebody there making sure I don't see things that they don't want me to see.
You know what's interesting about Twitter, and we found this, we have a lot of debate around ARC's own strategies. We can filter that debate ourselves. So we can unfollow people if we think there's bad behavior, but that's our choice. And we can follow those people who we think are moving discussions, whether it's about innovation or the economy, moving discussions along.
Low-key Savage asked, if there's less censorship, isn't that going to make Twitter a worse experience? Cathie pointing out the really fucking obvious. You do realize you can curate your own experience on Twitter by following and unfollowing people. You don't need somebody to be curating content for you. You can determine the things you want to be exposed to, the opinions and ideas, the people you want to follow, the tweets you want to see and not see, yourself, like an adult. I guess this is the difference between the mindset of a sheeple who just needs someone or something in a position of authority and or power to tell them what to do, think, and believe, versus somebody like Cathie Wood, who appears to actually prefer a little bit more autonomy and freedom to choose the ideas, opinions, and thoughts that she's exposed to. I'm in the Cathie Wood camp. I'd rather make up my own mind than have someone do it for me. But hey, that's just me.
So I think there's a lot of wisdom out there, and we're kind of sick of the nonsense that we see on some of these social platforms. And Twitter, I think, is going to give us more tools to filter out the nonsense and get right down to business.
I certainly would like to filter out a lot of the nonsense sometimes on there, Cathie. I want to ask you more broadly about ARK Invest and your funds. I was looking at ARK K in particular and the fund flows that we have seen, which we're seeing sort of bigger swings to the up and to the downside earlier in the year. They've gotten a little more muted as of late. You talk a lot about your 3 to 5 year time horizon, which yes, I think makes sense, but I wonder how patient investors are going to be, particularly in an environment where they're seeing losses, not just in RK, but in lots of other areas as well.
Yes, and I think one thing that helps our clients is our research, and they see that it's first principles research. We have the long-term time horizon, and we're seeing spectacular exponential growth opportunities. And not only one by one, the various platforms I just described, but the convergence of those platforms. So one S-curve feeding another. And I think many of our clients understand that they're short innovation, truly disruptive innovation. If you own the NASDAQ or the NASDAQ 100 right now, and you look through that index, this is not the index that I grew up with. In the 80s and 90s, when we were looking for innovation, we'd go to the NASDAQ. But if you look through the NASDAQ now, and especially the NASDAQ 100, what you see are 25% of the names touching disruptive innovation. The rest of them are kind of me too. They look like other indexes, the FANGs, Microsoft, NVIDIA. Tesla would be our only overlap. And then you look further and more deeply into these indices, and you see names that you'd never expect to be there. Food and beverage, utilities, rails, brick and mortar retail. These are not innovation companies.
She is right, and this is a very important point. The majority of the indices today are full of dinosaurs who will soon be extinct.
And so what we've done at ARC is we are pure play innovation, and we'd like to think we are what the NASDAQ used to be in the 80s and 90s. And it used to be a very productive place to invest with a long-term investment time horizon. So I think our sharing our research and our pointing out to investors, look, what you think you own in innovation is not what it used to be. And what ARC is doing is really back to the future. We're all about investing in the future as opposed to indexes, which are more about past success. Those companies that have been extremely successful have risen to the top of these indexes. But if we're right, in these 5 platforms that involve 14 different technologies are going to disrupt the traditional world order, then investors need to get to the right side of change. And one of the other things that we do, it's one of our missions and values, is to educate. That's why we give our research away. And we want to educate not only investors, but parents and grandparents about how the world is changing, how radically it's changing, and how it's ever more important to get especially students on the right side of change so that they can enjoy these incredible growth opportunities and not be disrupted by industries that will be sunsetting, shall I say.
Once again, I'm going to go out on a limb here and translate what I believe Cathie Wood really meant to say but can't say because of the whole compliance bullshit. Industries that will be sunsetting, so to say, would probably translate fairly accurately to industries that will be completely imploding, collapsing, and vanishing, shall we say.
Cathie, a 3 to 5 year time horizon means not only kind of midterm or recession proofing your companies, you're not just recession proofing your portfolio, you're also kind of midterm proofing your portfolio. You're general election proofing your portfolio. And so, at ARC, how do you go about identifying disruptive innovation that then doesn't get disrupted by public policy or political agenda?
Well, we have a 6-metric scoring system, very much focused on innovation. One of the scores is thesis risk. Thesis risk has a lot to do with government policy. And so in the early days of ARC in 2014-15, we were thinking, okay, government may be very concerned about the safety of autonomous vehicles. But as we've moved through these last 8 years, what we've seen, thankfully, is the government and regulators in particular very focused on data. And what does the data say? The data says that most fatalities and accidents, 85, almost 90% of them, are caused by human error. If we take the human being out of the equation, then we're going to save up to 35, 40,000 lives in the United States, the fatalities per year, and up to 1.25 million around the world. That is a noble goal. And we've been very gratified to see the regulators looking at the fatalities in Tesla's vehicles and informing us that for the most part, most of those fatalities were caused by human error. And for the second, that people who are driving Tesla vehicles are much safer thanks to the various automated driving capabilities now, up to 40% safer than in most other cars.
That's not what the mainstream media told me. They told me that when you get in a Tesla, it spontaneously combusts and they're dangerous. I thought a Tesla always drives over children in the street because it's dangerous autonomous software. Did Mr. Burns lie to me?
So we're very focused on what governments are studying in terms of the data. And if they stick to the data, innovation typically it solves problems and makes the world a better place.
Innovation sure does solve problems and make the world a better place, and here's some proof of the stock market recognizing that very factor. Tesla stock year to date down a mere 45%, one of the least disruptive, least innovative, least positively impacting the world companies on planet Earth who are executing terribly. This makes a lot of sense, and I'm glad the stock market is reasonable and rational, especially when it comes to disruptive, innovative companies that are positively changing the world. Ahem. And don't forget to join Patreon with the card in the corner or the link in the pinned comment, unless of course you don't want access to 175 plus exclusive videos and counting, and of course my up-to-date 10-year Tesla stock price targets. Stunningly, I haven't been cancelled after yesterday's video, at least not yet, so see you over on Patreon. I'm Stephen Mark Ryan, this is Solving the Money Problem, and I love you all.